Mystery Man on the Hill. In the mid-80s, my mama worked at my school in a different class than me. I was in nursery. To get to the school, she always took a shortcut over the heath. About 2 weeks earlier, a local girl in her late teens, who my family vaguely knew, went missing, and the last time someone saw her, she was over the heath. Mama said she wasn't that concerned by this, as she practically grew up over there. It was summer in the middle of the day, and the route she took was quite busy with other people walking their dogs and golf balling. One day, soon after the disappearance, Mama set off to work. Halfway to school, she stopped. She told me many years later, she had that creeping feeling that you get when you are being watched. She looked over her shoulder, and at the top of the small hill she just walked down was a figure of a big tall man in biker's leathers and helmet. She said she couldn't see his face, but she had the uneasy feeling that he had been watching her for some time. She said it was funny because she had not seen him coming down the hill, but there was a heavily wooded area opposite to the hill, and Mama said she thought he might have walked through there. That would explain why she had not seen him before this time. Mama said she felt uneasy by his stillness and interest, so she walked a little faster, and soon there was a healthy distance between her and the stranger. On the way home later that day, she decided to get the bus home instead of walking. A week later, the body of the teenage girl was discovered by a dog walker in the same wooded area opposite the hill where the strange biker man had been watching Mama. There was a police search and they appealed for information and witnesses. Mama contacted them and made a statement telling them about the mystery man on the hill. The police never did solve the murder of the poor local girl, and Mama never walked that way to work again. Green hair. This is a true story that contains an old wives' tale from my gran, so it is exactly what it sounds like, and the truth of its accuracy is subjective to what the reader believes. The parts about my mom, Elle, and I are 100% true. We were about 8 or 9 the day Mom took Elle and I over the heath. It was a hot and bright day in the middle of the summer holidays. We had been collecting natural materials to make a collage. When we got home and Mom's rucksack was full of stray feathers, wild grasses, leaves, and twigs, and we were on our way home where Gran was making a cheese flan and salad for dinner. As we were all very hot and slightly tired, Mom had decided that we would wade through the river instead of going back over the hills the way we had come. The thought of pushing my tiny wheelchair through the muddy-bottomed, weed-tangled river never seemed to faze my mom. She was a healthy, fit 26-year-old and knew the heath like the back of her hand. The river wasn't very deep at that part, so Mom tipped my wheelchair back, told Elle to hold on to the handle, and we went in. The water immediately soaked our clothes through, and Elle and I started to scream, giggle, and splash each other in sheer delight. Then we saw them. Weeds. Flowing with the current of the river, swaying back and forth like a woman's long, tangled, unkempt hair, and I got the distinct impression that what we saw could have been either thing. I glanced at Elle and instantly knew that she was having the same uncanny notion. The weeds started to curl around our legs and the wheels of my wheelchair, making our progress a little more laborious, and our previous screams of playful fun changed to moans and squeals of unease and disgust as we felt the weeds gently tugging at our legs. At no point did Mom ever look anxious or fazed by this experience. She just kept saying, "It's only water weeds, you two. Come on, don't be silly. You've seen them loads of times." We finally reached the other side of the river, and as Mom dragged my wheelchair backwards up the riverbank, Elle climbed up it and sat down beside me. We both just stared silently at the river and the sea of green for what felt like the longest time, but in actual fact was only 10 minutes before walking the rest of the way home. That night, after a hot bubble bath and cheese flan salad in our flannel pajamas and slipper socks around the fire drinking hot tea, we told Gran about our adventure. Our Gran took a sip of tea from her mug and told us the story of Green Hair. She had been a real person, though her real name had been forgotten by Gran, conveniently, Elle and I thought. Anyway, she had lived in the village around 1912, before the area was built up and modernized and developed into what it has become. She was young and kind, with a pretty face and beautiful long blonde hair, a daughter of a gentleman farmer, and was deeply in love with a handsome young soldier. They were to get married, but before they could, the Great War broke out and her young man was called up to fight. He was killed by a hand grenade on the front line, and when she found out she was widowed before she'd even become a wife, she lost the will to live, and driven by grief-stricken insanity, she went to the same river that we waded through, and she threw herself in. The river was as wild as the land at the time, and by the time her body was discovered, it was blue, bloated, and half eaten by fish. Her long corn-colored hair had become interwoven with the slimy algae and long strands of evil-smelling river weeds which clogged and choked the bed of the river. In fact, the pathologist who performed the post-mortem said that the body may have been found sooner, if not for the dark green weeds that appeared to have curled around her limbs and torso, anchoring her corpse to the riverbed for days. From that time onwards, it was said that the river was haunted, cursed, or both. Anyway, an extremely bad place. People claimed to see the spirit of the young woman kneeling beside the river and weeping bitterly. More commonly, people often saw the body of the girl floating on top of the water with long green hair or weeds streaming out behind her, and so she was given the name of Green Hair. Elle and I asked Gran why we hadn't heard this story before. Gran just smiled and said because it was an age ago, even before she herself was born and moved to the area. The area was developed and built up, and the river was tidied up and reconstructed, and along with it, the tragic tale of Green Hair was lost in the stream of passing time. We didn't altogether believe Gran's morbid tale, but when Elle and I talked about it in bed that night, neither of us could dismiss the eerie feeling that we saw Green Hair flowing in the river that day.